Buffalo girls, won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight? Won't you come out tonight? Buffalo girls, won't you come out tonight? And dance by the light of the moon. Hello, everybody. My name is Wyatt.
And I'm Rhett.
And give a very special Brower Brothers welcome to our new guest and interim podcast friend, Casen Weeden.
Hi, I'm Casen Weeden. Nice to meet you.
He's a man of few words, but they hit home.
Thank you for that. That was a lovely introduction to me.
Casen, would you like to say a few words about your character?
My character?
Maybe erase the past entry that you gave.
Let's bring that up again. This is our first go.
I can't believe I said that twice.
I am their first of all. I'm the Brower's neighbor. I lived near them for a very long time, almost.
Now he lives with
16 years. I now live with them in LA because I have nothing to do in my spare time. I'm filling in an empty room. I'm having a good time. This is my vacation, a 3-month vacation. It's going pretty good. Making shrinky dinks, playing with clay, all this. A lot of crafting going on in my time.
Casen, ultra creative, ultra hogged out.
Thank you.
All-time best friend.
Yes.
And you are with
the Brower Brothers.
That's a good intro.
It's been a long time, guys. We've missed you so much. How have you been?
Oh, that's great to hear.
We're doing a very festive holiday episode, and we're going to be talking. Rhett, what movie are we covering today?
Only the best Christmas movie of all time.
That's right. 1946, James Stewart, Frank Capra, It's a Wonderful Life. This movie, I feel like everyone's seen it. Now we'll jump in.
It's a big holiday movie. As my family watched it every year.
It's like one of those things that's become a tradition in many households. And we're gonna
a close friend of ours. It's their favorite movie.
Teddy Castro.
Yes,
Shout
I
out
just
Teddy.
said his whole name.
Really?
Teddy Castro. He lives in Chicago.
You just doxed him.
It's a shout out, Teddy.
Yes, it's his favorite movie.
So Teddy, this one's for you. We're about to really upset you.
Yeah, we're about to really make you upset.
I think we only improve it from here, so I'm excited.
We begin this Christmas story in the same place that all Christmas stories begin. Outer space. Deep in a distant nebula, a trio of stars converse about a very specific little boy, a boy by the name of George Bailey. Though not all of the stars seem to agree about how special the child is, there is one that seems to be quite the fan of young George, sending us back through the void of space into the rural countryside of the United States. Little fun fact, George Bailey grew up in a town called Bedford Falls, as in Bedford Falls, New York, fictitious town, based on a town that we grew up like right down the road from.
Ooh.
In fact, later on in the movie, there's a character that has to make it home for Christmas in Elmira, and he realistically would have to drive through our hometown.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, the town is based off of Seneca Falls, right?
Yes, Seneca Falls.
Which is on Seneca Lake, which is also where we grew up.
Why are we
on
doxing
Seneca
ourselves?
Lake.
We gotta stop giving detail to these people.
Seneca Lake, Watkins Glen, New York. Bitch.
The year is 1919. Children romp and play in the winter snow. It's a simpler time back now, and obesity hasn't become an issue yet, allowing the kids to ride on the heads of shovels down the white hills as they are too poor to afford sleds. There isn't an adult in sight as the kids ride their shovels directly onto a nearby river, in a time where the mortality rate of drowning was exponentially higher. George Bailey is just another kid. He's not exceptional, he's not cool, but today he stands out. In fact, both of the Baileys do. His younger brother, Harry, riding his shovel onto the river, breaks through the ice and begins to drown. Once again, no adults. The children have to fend for themselves. So acting fast, George jumps into the freezing water and rescues his brother, the temperature giving him a cold that somehow causes him to go deaf in his left ear.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
The child labor laws are far more relaxed back now, so George is a full-time employee of Old Man Gower's drugstore. For some reason, the pharmacy doubled as an ice cream parlor because whatever the hell. And we learn that George is a sort of hot shot amongst the local girls. Two of the
Say the
customers.
lines
Say
right.
the local little girls.
The local little girls, my apologies. Two of the customers of Mr. Gower's drugstore slash ice cream parlor are classmates of George, both of which are 3 grades below. One by the name of Mary and the other by Violet. Mary's an important character to the story. Violet's character is a slut. This is important to the story as well. George reveals his aspirations. The only thing in the world that he wants to do is travel to get out of Bedford Falls and see the world. You're going to want to remember this also.
You know what the drugstore also doubled as?
What?
Poison shop.
Oh, we'll get to that. I have a lot to talk about.
No
in the
spoilers
next fucking,
now.
fucking paragraph.
Just sell whatever the hell at the fucking drugstore.
There's a line where George Bailey is talking to Mary after Violet leaves. And she's like, oh, I guess I'll have the coconut. And he like the ice cream, and he's like, oh, coconut? What brainless? And then he berates her for not knowing history facts, and he talks about how he's gonna go all over the world. And I made a note when I was watching the movie that he's a creepy little 12-year-old because he says, quote, I'll have a couple of harems and 3 to 4 wives too.
It was a different time. It's a different time.
Different time.
These are good people. Maybe not. That's what you just said.
Yeah, do you think he was talking about like when his brother, when he was not watching his brother, like the year before, go fall into the river?
It was like 2 weeks before.
Like, because clearly this like alludes to the idea that he's like, at least like thinking sexually. He was not paying attention to his brother, like talking about all these girls he wants to fuck around the world. He's like, ah, man.
He's
oh
almost a
shit,
sociopath.
Harry.
Harry's drowning.
And he has this conversation to a girl alone in the ice cream shop. So a little
The weirdest part is
inopportune time
Mr.
to have
brain
it.
dead.
Brainless. The weirdest
Hey,
part.
dumbass! I'm gonna have a harem in my future. You want to be part of it? That's
The
that's
creepiest
wrong.
part
He's
is
12.
Mr. Gower in the other room peeking through the blinds, all drunk. What's going on? Mary capitalizes on George's disability and confesses her love for him into his deaf ear, thus eliminating the purpose of a confession. After the girls leave, we learn about Mr. Gower, who is a raging drunk, mourning the loss of his son, who has only recently died to the currently out-of-control influenza, like this morning. A drunk pharmacist, a drunk, clearly vengeful pharmacist, as it turns out, as George discovers the old man replacing people's medicine with poison. It literally says poison on the jar. Why that's in the same room as people's medication is beyond me. Mr. Gower gets a telegram telling him that his son is dead. I feel like a phone call or a letter is way more appropriate. Imagine getting a fucking email.
Mr. Gower, stop. Your son is
Exactly.
dead. Stop.
Like, imagine getting
Stop.
bad news
Stop.
through Morse code. Like, that's horrible. Also, the cruel and bitter irony of a pharmacist's son dying to disease.
Was
Nothing
there
you could
nothing
do.
I could do? You know what he could have done? Fucking poisoned him like he was doing to everybody else
Oh
in the
my
town.
god, guys. This guy, Gower had a pharmacy full of drugs in the back. I'm not even going to talk about how ridiculous a drunk pharmacist is. That's bad as it is.
But was he a drunk before?
First impressions
I'm
are
gonna
very
say
strong.
that his son's death spurred that, at least to
Okay.
the point of
If
Yeah, but
my doctor's
potential
son
death.
died, I would expect him to recuse himself from doctorial duties for the day.
Yeah.
Somebody else should be giving the drugs out.
I don't want it. I don't want drunk
But who's
surgery.
gonna run the ice cream shop?
Actually, if your son dies, you still have to open up the ice cream shop.
I agree with that.
You don't
He,
get a day off.
There is it doesn't say rat poison. It doesn't say a different drug compound name or a different medicine name. He's taking from a big ass jar of white substance that just says poison.
It was an off day. Let's just leave it at that. Keep
Why
going.
the fuck? Where do you buy that? I
And-
guess from the druggist, from the pharmacist. He'd be the guy to go to. But
He
why
bought poison in bulk from the
from the Costco
Yeah,
of death substances?
I guess.
of death?
The Costco of death.
George rushes to his family business, the business and loan, and rudely walks in on an important meeting between his father and Mr. Potter, the richest man in town. In this scene, we meet a great cast of characters. George's dad, a good, honest man. Potter, a turtle-faced fellow in the wheelchair, a clear indicator of his evil ways according to 1940s logic, as well as George's Uncle Billy. The man is so forgetful that he ties twine around his fingers to remind himself how fucking forgetful he is. This is the man that you're supposed to trust with your money.
You wrote this with such hate.
Let's put it this way. Billy's brother is having a meeting with Mr. Potter and he's told to stay outside. But George, the partially deaf child, is allowed to come up into the room. Bedford Falls is imploding. Let's all just hope that George's dad is in good health so Billy doesn't have to be put in charge of anything else.
Billy's a fucking idiot.
Uncle Billy?
Yeah.
All right.
Uncle Baby Billy?
Getting the advice that he needs from his dad to not facilitate Mr. Gower's deliberate poisoning, as well as setting up the exposition that Potter is a mean old capitalist that wants to buy the whole town for himself, George returns to the pharmacy to get a good old slap in the deaf ear from Mr. Gower for being disobedient. George then breaks the news to Mr. Gower that he was filling the pills with rat poison, to which Gower cries and cries. So, we're only a few minutes into the movie and George has already saved his brother, along with perhaps several other residents of Bedford Falls. Quite a reliable little guy.
So Gower is caught by George after he slaps the shit out of him.
Beats the shit out of him.
His ear is bleeding and George's like, please don't hit my sore ear again.
Yeah,
it's really
his
sad.
it's his disabled ear. It's basically like he was beating Mr. Potter's legs.
And George is like, you didn't mean to do it, Mr. Gower. You got that letter and you're upset. It's poison, I tell you, it's poison. And Mr. Gower pretends like he doesn't know and then cries. But I think that Mr. Gower, he's a skilled druggist, mind you. He's the best in town. I think his plan, I don't think
He's
it was
a
an accident.
terrorist.
He's trying to take people down with his son.
I disagree. I'm going to be in defense of this movie. He is just a drunk. He's upset that his son is dead, and he wasn't paying attention to his recipe for whatever he was making for the influence. I don't know what he was making.
He's
pills
so
for.
drunk that he can't read the label of the
Yeah.
medicine that he's distributing to sick children.
He beat a child senseless in the deaf ear. He's not worried about the repercussions of
And
life
not
right now.
one legal repercussion was taken against him beating the fuck out of George Bailey.
They made a pact. I didn't tell anybody. And George is a good kid.
Instantly flash forward a few years later, George Bailey, now fresh out of college. Yeah,
No, he didn't go to college.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's
Now-
all he fucking wanted to do.
Now 21 years old. 22 years old, I think.
22.
years old. Just finished high
In his
school.
20s. Flash forward a few years later, George Bailey, now in his 20s, yet played by a nearly 40-year-old man, is buying a suitcase for the travels he has always dreamed of. George is about to finally leave Bedford Falls, and everyone is beyond kind to him, especially Violet, who sluts it up once more, now an adult. Ooh la la. It's a wonderful life, a feminist masterpiece, and civil rights masterpiece, as it turns out, because when we make it back to the Bailey residence for the first time, we're introduced to their living slave. Annie, the only black person in the entire movie, is the housekeeper who was sexually assaulted on screen by George's brother Harry. I mean, how is this a Christmas movie? And also, it's a clear indicator of constant abuse, because as soon as Harry got that look in her eye, she started running. Don't you lay a hand on me. And he's like, ah, I'm gonna touch her.
He's a villain.
Merry fucking Christmas, Bedford Falls.
Oh my god.
Maybe this is comeuppance. Maybe this is karma for the Baileys.
The Bailey brothers make their way to Harry's graduation party, a school event that takes place in the school. 40-year-old George decides to inappropriately tag along to the dance with underage girls. George, apparently some sort of engineer, is responsible for the dance floor / pool design that, at the worst possible moment, opens up, causing all the high schoolers and predators to fall into the water. And since none of them can swim, they all drown. The end. Just kidding. It gets scarier than that.
There's something I wanted to talk about.
He goes to the dance, and the guy, hee-haw,
fucking Sam Wainwright.
Sam
Oh my
Wainwright.
god. The most unlikable person ever.
Sam Wainwright, he disses Mary. He disses Mary and is like, oh, come on, George, dance with Mary.
Dance with Mary.
I definitely don't want to marry
Yeah, I don't
her.
want her. Also, can we address something? Sam Wainwright, dumb fuck. His whole thing is he goes hee-haw, hee-haw, and he puts his hands on his head like antlers. Donkeys don't have antlers. So his whole personality just came shattering down right now. His whole thing is so stupid.
He's supposed to be annoying. I'm okay with that, but I do dislike the hee-haws.
Hee-haws.
Very annoying. It's multiple times throughout the movie.
Oh, there's an important scene that I left out here where George has a conversation with his dad as Harry's getting ready for his party.
Yes.
And George's dad, Peter Bailey, good man, dreamer, everyone likes him. He talks to George, who's on his way out. And he's like, have you ever considered staying here forever and working at the building and loan? And Harry's like, I don't want to do that. It's not important. I couldn't stand it. I would hate my life. And his dad,
George, not Harry.
You mean George?
yeah, sorry, George Bailey. I think his dad was planning to die right then and there. He's like, you know what? But you're saying there's a chance. You'll stay? You'll stay.
Okay, I'm gonna die.
I'm just so tired.
He's really pushing a lot of pressure on his boy.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
All George ever wanted to do was just maybe leave Bedford Falls once. And
Just to get
nobody
out
would let him.
once.
Yeah, that's all he
And
ever wanted.
His father wouldn't let him. Changing into dirty football uniform, George walks one of the high school girls home, a girl by the name of Mary. The very same Mary who whispered her love for him in his deaf ear. The man is full-on freak. He can't be stopped. After singing Buffalo Girls and weirdly hitting the harmonies, George put the moves on the woman. He uses time-tested maneuvers such as breathing heavy and awkwardly staring at her. He tells her he'll throw a rope at the moon and bring it down for her.
Dude, some A1 Riz goes on in this scene.
Fellas, take notes. Say Mary.
You know,
Well, then you can swallow.
at least it's a step up from talking about harems and what he's going to do to women.
Well,
in
he
his
was
future.
12 years old.
He
This
was
is 10
at
years
least
later.
he's
not much
at
better.
least he's moved on from that. So that's
What do you
it's a step up. For
What am I
for
gonna do
George.
with it once you get it? Well, then you'll swallow it, and then you'll ingest it, and the moonbeams they'll fire out of your fingertips and the end of your hair.
That line never made me feel comfortable as a child.
No,
I just
no,
something
it
was off.
weird, and she was like, "Oh, yeah,
I'm digging it.
Mm.
Talking about those
That's what I'm
moonbeams
talking
shooting out of my
about.
body.
Oh, you gonna moonbeam me, baby? Yeah." It's a different time. On the walk home, they stumble upon an old abandoned house. It's tattered, with the paint peeling from the wood. The windows have been knocked out, and there are clearly some structural issues. But Mary loves the house. George, on the other hand, loves it for a different reason. It's magical. Legend says if you break a piece of glass, you get to make a wish. But since everyone has come through and made their wishes, there isn't much glass left. Only 2 more spots. So George throws a rock and takes out some glass and makes a wish. But not just one wish, a whole hatful. He's gonna shake the dust of this old town and see the world. He lays out his entire life plan, detailing where he's gonna go, in what order, and then what he's gonna study in college and what career he'll go into. And as he's talking, Mary picks up a rock and knocks out the last piece of glass and walks away, not telling George what it is she wished for. This bitch!
This is where George's life goes from fine to fucked.
He was like, oh, I'm going to go see the world. I'm going to be like a businessman. I'm going to be an inventor. Blah, 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 blah. And she throws a glass and she's like, I wish your father to die.
Yeah, that's exactly what she fucking did. She threw her rock and it was like, I wish
That's
all.
not
She's like, I want.
confirmed.
She wants to cancel out all of his wishes, and I want your dad to
She
die.
slammed that Uno reverse card
She
on
just
him.
wanted the house with him. That's all. Now, it may have killed his father. That may have been part
It's
of
the
it.
monkey
but
paw.
It is.
She's like, oh man,
Mary
I want
Hatch.
nothing. I want everything George just said. I don't want to happen for him. I want what I want. And then God's like,
Mary
boom,
Hatch.
shoots George's dad with a heart attack
Let's just
and
open
keeps
this
him
up.
there forever.
Let's just open this up right here. I've seen a lot of sources saying that Mary Hatch is actually the hero of the story and not
Excuse me?
George. Bitch is the villain. Mary Hatch got to live the life that she always wanted, always dreamed of. In the 1920s, she got to go to college as a woman, which I'm sure is like good. That's got to be good. What are the rates? It's got to be lower back then.
For Bedford Falls, especially.
Especially.
A nowhere
And
podunk town.
Also, they say they just made it college, like they just called it like state or something like that because the studios were like, you need to keep it vague. She went to Cornell
How do you know?
because that's where Harry went too. They all, like a lot of them went to Cornell University. Harry was a football star. And then she went, I'm pretty sure, and stayed in New York for a little while with her dumb fuck boyfriend, Sam
Hee-haw.
Wainwright, hee-haw.
Mhm.
And then she got to come back and just live the life that she wanted. Didn't have to work, got the house, got George Bailey, who she wanted for some reason, even though he's fucked up. He's a
He's a freak.
He's a disturbed man.
Yeah.
Have you seen his face? His facial expressions.
Eyes, man, you can tell in the eyes. He's got scary eyes.
It does play like a horror movie.
I mean,
at
come
some
on.
points.
The way he grabs people.
The movie is about him gonna kill himself.
Yeah.
That's mental illness.
So what you're saying is she took advantage of a mentally ill man.
Now, I'm not saying that she took advantage. I'm saying that she was in love with a mentally ill man, so she's got to know the territory that comes with that.
Yeah.
After more awkward flirting, Mary finds herself naked in a bush. With her robe nearby, but just out of reach, George, the classic playboy, begins to use his methods of extortion before his Uncle Billy pulls up telling him to get in the car. It's bad news. His father has died. Classic Bailey brother sexual assault going on.
Oh, I got it. I know what I want you to do. I can only imagine what he was going to make her do for that rope. The last witness was just sent inside because of violence, because George was going to fight him.
The best thing that could have happened was that his father died to get him out of it, because I didn't want to see what was going to play out on that screen.
Say, Mary, don't scream when I ask. Say, hot dog.
No, how old was she again? 18 or 17?
17, 18.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. Because he was like, oh, man, you were just a little girl. You're a woman now. Or something like that. And he was like, say, how old are you anyway?
Just last year you were 17.
Yeah. And he was like, say, how old are you? And she's like, 17.
No, 18. She
18.
I think the line is
it was just last year you were 17. And she was like, too young or too old? So she knew this guy might have liked him young.
Mm-hmm.
He's weird.
With the only responsible person in the family dead, Uncle Billy will have to take over the bank, or the building and loans. But that simply won't stand because he is a known imbecile. So in order to keep the family afloat, George packs up his new suitcase, sets aside his dreams, and fills the empty shoes of his father, giving his own college money to Harry, George's little brother. Goes off to school where he is a football hero. Mary also goes off to college, leaving George alone with only one main character, Uncle Billy.
Uncle Billy's such an idiot. They have a meeting where they're like, we're probably going to dissolve the building and loan. And George is like, please don't. And then everyone's like, okay, if you want it, you'll have to stay. Meaning that Uncle Billy is so untrustworthy that they would rather get rid of an entire business than have him be in charge of something. And what does George do? What does Peter do? Peter Bailey, his dad? Fucking have him be partner. Have him be second in command.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
And also, let's raise the stakes. George can never leave because he gave all of his money to his little brother. Because for some reason, his little brother was inexplicably not saving for school.
And it's not like he can make that money back. His business is failing.
Yeah, was Harry working? Because George had to have a job from the time he was like
college.
6 years old.
Everything was paid for. Thank you, brother. Thank you,
George
amazing
worked
brother.
at Mr. Gowers. Did Harry work anywhere, or was he just Mr. Hotshot?
No, they
Hotshot,
made fun of him. They called him the donkey. That's what I assume. That's why they called him Hee Haw. I don't know
that's
why.
Sam
That's
Wainwright.
Sam
That's not
Wainwright.
Harry.
No, but they all did as a kid. They all said Hee Haw when he went to work.
This is a work donkey.
Yeah, he's a work donkey.
Who is George?
George. They did say hee haw to him.
So I don't think
He's
any
the
of them actually
hee-haw.
held up a job.
No, because he was saying hee haw to everyone. He said hee haw
No,
to Mary.
Sam Wainwright is just an
I
idiot.
think that was just his catchphrase. It just eventually stuck.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
When the 70s rolled around and that country music TV show came out, hee haw, he must have been like, yeah. Must have been like the best program for him. He probably wrote it. He probably is like, we need a show. The building and loan does just fine. They do whatever building and loans do, and they do it well. But for 4 long years, George's plans are put on hold. That is until his brother gets back and he can resign from his position as family prisoner and go live his life. Unfortunately, when his brother returns home from college, he has a new wife, whose father has given him a much better job opportunity in Buffalo. So George decides to let Harry live his dream, putting himself in the shit once more, and giving his brother a more prosperous existence.
Harry then it gets drafted. War breaks out. So even Harry was gonna go work at the plastics factory or whatever the hell.
No, it was something else.
Oh no, Hee Haw made
Hee-Haw
the
has
plastics
the
factory.
You listen to me.
No, it was research. Something
Yeah, he was
research.
doing
Yeah,
something with research.
He's great at research.
He's great at research, whatever that means.
I
Who
lost
isn't
a
good at
lot
research?
of respect for Harry after this scene because he didn't invite his own brother or tell his brother that he had a wife.
It was a whirlwind eloping.
At least at least telegraph somebody. If you
That
can
is true, they had
tell,
telegraphs.
if you can tell
Yeah.
someone that their son is
Telegram.
dead of the influenza, you can listen.
Yeah,
Hey,
10
I'm
years,
married.
almost 15 years ago now, Gower's son was told, they found out about his son dying. In a
They got the
telegram.
rotary phone and extension now too. They show it in the next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cool. It's not cool.
No, Harry's just a little spitfire
selfish.
asshole.
Yeah.
He does whatever he wants
He's
all the
riding
time.
off his family. That's it.
But he was
He's
pretty
got
much
no
told
excuse.
to do that.
Yeah. Don't worry, Harry. George will take care of you.
I'm gonna die,
Okay.
and your brother will take care of you.
You just run along now, Harry. You go live the life I could have had. George he had the most potential. They say it over and over again. Everyone said it. He was the smartest. He was the best. By all means, is that a word? By all means?
Yeah.
They should have followed Harry's life.
Would've been
That would have been so
that would have been like
exciting.
Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
He almost died. Football star.
Oh
War
my
hero.
God. What the hell?
War hero.
Word for word, bar for bar.
What happens in Harry's life next?
Then he goes home and lives his life free.
Rich guy, and
that's
because
when
they
he just
talked
comes
about
back
how-
a war hero.
Yeah, so pretty much Forrest Gump. Harry is.
We didn't go
Forrest
through
Gump.
the full life. Then that's when Forrest Gump kicks in.
Forrest Gump has a little bit on Harry, but Forrest Gump didn't have to tear down his older brother to be able
Yeah.
to
He didn't have to
sacrifice
punish anyone
to
to do it.
sacrifice his older brother to monotony in a mundane life in order to be able to do it. George, still interested in Mary, weirdly shows up at her house and kind of yells at her for an evening. It doesn't go well. That is until an old buddy rings them from New York, the hee-haw guy.
Sam Wainwright.
Why he does that, I have no idea. But because someone once said this movie is good, you're just supposed to go with the flow and accept it. The random ass bullshit that perpetually occurs throughout this shockingly long 40s movie. They have to hold the receiver between their ears and get real close. Real close.
So close. They're so close I can smell the cigarettes off them.
The tension is palpable, and when Hee Haw offers the two of them a job, the tension breaks and they drop the phone. George, with tears in his eyes, grabs Mary by the shoulders and tells her that he doesn't want anything that this guy's offering them. He doesn't want any ground floors, he doesn't want any plastics, and he doesn't want to get married to anyone ever. He wants to do what he wants to do. The two weep and cry, laying a few, no doubt, snotty kisses on one another. But, as it seems, Mary is on the list for one of the things George wants to do. Nailed it.
You think Hee Haw heard their face sucking?
They didn't hang up.
They didn't
Hee
hang
Haw,
up.
the phone.
Hee Haw is like, you're stealing my girl, as he's with another girl. He called with another girl.
Now you listen
Just-
to me. I don't
I-
want
I
any
guess rip it
ground
up like a
floors and I
Band-Aid.
don't want any plastics. And I don't want to get married to anyone ever. I want to do what I want to do. Fuck you, George. Fuck you. Dude, she went all out though for his arrival. She drew that wonderful picture of him lassoing the moon. She bought the Buffalo
Dude,
Girls
everybody in the
record.
40s was fucking angry. She smashed her record when he didn't, come on to her advances.
It was a more passionate time.
It was a more passionate time. She walked over to the record player, was playing the music. Most people just turned it off, maybe. She
Mhm.
smashed that shit and then yelled at her mom, took the phone call from Hee Haw, kind of
Well, her
gave
mom
him the
wanted
cold
him
shoulder.
her mom wanted her to marry Hee Haw, which I mean, Mother of the Year.
Yeah, a lot of money.
He gets
Yeah,
so
prospects.
rich. He becomes like a tycoon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this whole scene, by the way, I forgot to write in. This all takes place during pretty much the wedding reception of his brother and his new wife. And he gets so drunk and his mom, George's mom is like, my loser ass son George doesn't have anybody, so he better go find a wife, and sends him over to Mary's house. It's weird.
Yeah.
That's a good
I don't
mom
have a
looking out for his
follow-up.
kid at least.
Well, don't you like her? Yeah, she's a peach.
She's a peach. And
Never
oh,
seen her
dude, the
again.
cringiest thing in the whole movie is when she tries to sing the Buffalo Girls, and he doesn't sing
He
it
doesn't
with her.
reciprocate.
Huh?
It's
Oh yeah.
It's
oh
kinda-
no. Oh, what's the matter?
it's like the Warhammer
Oh, right,
memes, but reversed.
He's like Super Sigma in this scene.
he comes
Oh,
over
yeah,
and
yeah,
what
that,
was
yeah.
it called? Negging.
Yeah, he negs her.
He negs her real hard.
I don't know what I'm
Huh?
doing here.
No, I don't know. I just came in to get
I didn't
warm.
tell anybody I was coming here. I don't know who told you.
I forgot my hat. No one's stealing anyone's girl. I'm off. fuck it here.
Oh, listen, Mary.
Fuck you, Mary Hatch. I hate you. She's a peach.
George and Mary get married, and it's a lovely entanglement. Everyone approves, but unfortunately, after their wedding in October of 1929, a particular event prevented the ceremony from going exactly as planned.
There's a run on the bank.
There's a run on the bank and the building loans, and it's stormed as the two of them are driving away, and George must put a stop to the carnage. As it turns out, the stock market has just crashed, and the panic is being felt nationwide. These people don't trust the banks, and they're coming to get their money back. But it doesn't work out that way. George tries to explain to the mob of idiots. Unfortunately, they won't take no for an answer. But they will happily take George's honeymoon money as compensation, giving people what they need for the time being. George forks over every penny of what he had saved for their getaway, forcing him to once again be chained to Bedford Falls.
Dude, okay, so
Who gave the money?
Who gave the money? Mary did. Mary did.
Yeah.
They could have left Bedford Falls. The building and loan could have closed. They could have been
Actually,
away.
Mary did say, "Let's just leave. Let's just go. Let's just go."
True
and he's
enough.
like, "No, Mary.
I gotta see what's
He did
going
push
on.
the
My
envelope
uncle's
on
an
that.
idiot."
Yeah, at some point, he could just say no. So I don't necessarily
I've been
feel
gone for
so
2
bad
minutes,
for George.
Huh?
I don't necessarily feel so bad for George. He could have said no at any point.
Yeah.
He could have taken
It's
the money.
his
He
family's
could have driven
legacy.
away in his car.
But it was her dream for him to never leave."
Yeah,
It was. She wished it. There's one guy. Okay, so here's the hierarchy of villains in this movie. It goes, boom, Mary Hatch, bad guy.
Number one villain.
Number one, Mary. Number two, Henry F. Potter, pretty bad guy. Number three, close third,
Uncle Baby
Tom.
Billy.
Oh shit, no, it goes Uncle Billy second,
Yeah.
Potter third, Tom.
Who's
No
Tom?
known
Tom?
last name. I want
Oh.
$242,
Oh, fuck that guy.
and $242 isn't going to break anybody.
I think he's on the top. He's such a douche.
Tom is a douchebag.
Fuck that
Because
guy.
no one's
Tom, if you're
trying to
listening,
be.
fuck you.
Yep. I think he's dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude. The movie was made in 1940. Tom's kids might be dead.
My poor Stan.
Fuck you, Tom.
Fuck you, Tom. Eternally.
The asshole. And then, well, I will say he comes back at the end of the movie and gives money into the hat for the
Okay,
fucking.
If he
fuck you,
gave
Tom.
$242
You wanna know nothing?
exactly
You
on
wanna
the
know something?
table, I would have forgiven him. but
I
he
didn't
did not.
hear anything about anybody coming back. And did George get reimbursed for what he did then? Did
Oh,
the building and
God,
loan give him
no.
any money?
No.
This is horrible.
Everybody just fucks on George Bailey.
Yeah.
They just take advantage of him.
Fun fact.
Clarence, the whole point of the movie is they're like, George, don't kill yourself. Everybody needs you.
Please stay.
Look at how much.
What are we
look
gonna
at-
do
look-
without you?
Look at everybody else's life because of you, because of your
You're a wonderful
sacrifices.
person. There's this one lady, I forget her name, like the name of the character, the old lady, who is like the third person in line to get money. So Tom is like $242, and that's going to break anyone. And then the second person,
$242. That was like
That's a tremendous amount.
for
that
one
was-
week.
that
He
was-
needed that for a
that
week.
was
9.
fucking like 15% of the whole fucking bank's money. They only he had to give away he had $2,000 to his name. That $250. That's like
It's like at least 10% minimum.
yeah.
Simple maths.
It is over 10% because it's 1/8.
The third person in line, because he takes 242, then the second guy takes 20. The lady, her line that was written for her was $17, but she improvised $17.50 because she thought that it felt more desperate to have the 50. And apparently James Stewart, the guy that played George Bailey, his reaction was like genuine. Like that was him actually like reacting to her saying that line when he kissed her, because that wasn't supposed to be what he did. It's a little film fact, little snippet. Also forgot to say a little film snippet. What's her name there? Mary, when she threw the rock out of the glass, that surprised Frank Capra, the director, because of course it's the 40s. He's like, girls can't throw. And apparently she like played baseball with her brothers in rural Iowa because there's nothing to do there. And she could throw. And it was just like everyone on set was amazed by her, even though her and apparently James Stewart hated each other. Film facts.
Film fact.
Nice.
But it's not all bad. George Bailey just has to live for the small victories. Soon enough, he has a family of his own. He buys his wife the house for her dreams, the one he never liked. And he helps
He
people.
wouldn't want to be in it as a ghost.
I wouldn't want to live in that if I were a ghost.
Yeah, he hated that house.
Everything that he doesn't want his life to be, it becomes.
Yeah, everything he didn't want to happen for his life happens. I wouldn't live in it as a ghost.
So he buys his wife that house, and he helps people throughout each and every day. And on top of that, he gets to hold his business over the head of Potter, who so desperately wants to take it from him, offering him again and again the opportunity to sell out. George's disability prevents him from joining the military during World War II. It wouldn't be so bad if his brother wasn't a hero responsible for shooting down 15 enemy planes attempting to bomb rescue boats. Full-on, bona fide hero, winner of the Medal of Honor. George was a banker. I looked it up. That's like, I think the title for a pilot that shoots that many people down in one day, mind you, is called Triple Ace in one day.
Triple ace?
Yeah, because he shot, because like 5 planes, I think, is an ace. Either way, it doesn't happen often. I think there's like 2 people ever to get that.
And Harry's one of them.
Harry's one of them.
He's one of them. Harry.
George's father, a man in good shape, died 20 years ago now. But for some reason, fat, stupid Uncle Billy is still tying yarn around his fingers and getting in the fucking way. He really seals the deal with his idiocy when he loses $8,000 while gloating to Mr. Potter. The dumbass folds the money into the old man's newspaper, essentially handing the money to the one person in town that wouldn't return it.
Yeah, so Harry, George's brother, wins the Medal of Honor, and it's like newspaper. It's like front page of the newspaper.
Yeah, it's like the biggest thing in this town's history.
So,
Triple ace.
Dumbass motherfucker Billy bumps into Mr. Potter at the bank, and he's like, "Ew, you can't keep those Potters down."
You mean those
Sorry,
Bailey boys?
You can't keep those Baileys down. And he like throws $8,000 in his face like they're at a strip club, and then waltzes out of the building.
Was he drunk for this or just an excitable idiot?
No, he's not a drunk.
No, Mr. Gower's
Gower's
the
the
drunk.
drunk. This guy's
True.
just a dumbass
Okay.
who's responsible for money. That's his job.
Yeah, his
How
his
he's in the
job
same
his job is
family as
literally
George
his
and
job.
Harry makes
His
no
job is to
sense.
keep track of money, and he took everybody's money and lost it in the street.
It's no wonder that everything else is being bought up by Potter. This whole town is a wreck. It's a train wreck. There's a drunk homicidal pharmacist and an idiot banker, and those are the only professions that we see in the whole town. I'm sure things get worse. The principal's letting predators into the school to dance with underage girls.
You know, my family always, my mom especially, always hated the part of the movie where George goes ballistic on idiot. What's his name again? His uncle. Uncle Billy.
Yeah,
Why?
he's supposed to feel bad.
And
Even
I loved that part because he deserved everything. He didn't hit his sword or he gave him an earful because he deserved it. He's been an idiot his entire life and he needed to hear it from a reliable source.
Even what George said, he wasn't right about. He even in his most selfish moment doesn't follow through with it because he's like, "You listen to me. You where's that money, you old fool? Someone's going to jail and it's not going to be me." And sure enough, when the fucking police come,
He takes
who's
the
the one
fall
that's
for
going to
it.
go to jail?
He does.
He is.
He's a good
Uncle
guy.
Billy's like, "You go to jail."
And George is like, okay.
George goes into a downward spiral after the money is misplaced. Uncle Billy gets an earful from George, as he should, before the man goes home and yells at his family. Finally, with his tail between his legs, George goes to the office of Potter and asks for a loan, even offering to put his life insurance policy down as collateral. Of course, Potter knows where the lost money is and how it got there, but now it is his turn to gloat. He denies George, who takes his issue to the one place that he can solve it, the bar.
Kind of danced over the whole scene where he goes home and yells at his family.
Oh, he goes ham on his family.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the first accurate.
Is this also when he was
representation.
gonna assault? He yelled at the
Assault?
teacher, gonna
Wait.
go assault the
Yes,
teacher and
same
the
scene. I feel like this is the first honest representation of what Mary Hatch was getting into when she wished this with George Bailey.
You know what?
Because
It's all been building. His life has never gone how he's wanted it to.
No.
And this is the only instance where he's blown up. At least that we've seen in the movie.
No, he slammed the car door. You saw a little
Yeah, he
taste of it
kicks
when
that.
he found
Taste.
out he could have been rich.
A little
Yeah.
nibble of it.
He kicks the car.
But this is a full-blown episode. I think this is the worst he can
This
get.
is an episode.
this is the second guy that he's threatened to beat the shit out of. The first one was when the first one was like, "Why don't you kiss her?" And he's like, "Say, huh? What'd you say? How about you come down here? I'll give you a kiss." He's want to fight that guy. Well, say your wife, she's a dummy. She's sending my kid home naked. That's her fault, not my fault for the kid having no clothes. Well, anytime you think you're man enough. She knew he was violent. Mary
Mhm.
Hatch knew he was a violent, angry man who was going to fly off the handle. The first line that he says to her is, "Hey, brainless." That's the first thing he says to her. Like, I mean, from the start, he's not like he's not a jolly guy.
No, he's very commanding.
He's always
force.
waiting to leave.
He's miserable.
He's always checking his watch. He's basically at a bus stop.
His
And the bus is never coming. So as the movie goes on and on and on, he's just like,
he's not happy. All he does is everyone knows that all he does is read books and wishes he wasn't with the people that are around the town.
Yep.
Oh man. Someday I'm gonna get out of here.
I'm gonna shake the dust off my boots of this old town. See the world. Never once does he leave the Bedford Falls city limits. Not once in the whole movie. Horror film.
Horror film.
Now is the point in all Christmas movies where the main character seriously considers suicide. But before George can jump off the bridge, someone else falls into the freezing waters below. In one swift motion, George disproves the movie trope of death by bridge jump by jumping off the bridge into the same waters that were about to kill him, and saves Clarence, a man who identifies himself as an angel. The only thing the angel carries is a book that frequently uses the N-word, so it's very obvious that he's legit.
It's Tom Sawyer. It's
Tom
a classic.
Yeah, no kid. Yeah, I noticed that too. Watching this the last few times, is he's gonna kill himself by jumping in the water, and then he jumps in the water,
and then Clarence is like, I know how to stop him. Ah! Jumps in the water. This'll get him.
I'll also kill myself.
Also, if you guys go back and watch the opening scene of this movie where they're in space, and it's Joseph, stepfather of Jesus, talking to God, both stars. They're like, oh man, this George Bailey fellow. People are giving us a lot of grief that we got to help this guy out. We got to send someone. Why not Clarence? And then Joseph is like, really?
Yeah, that idiot. We're gonna send him on this important assignment.
And God is like, he's got a childlike innocence to him. He's simple. He'll be great for the job. They sent the worst fucking guy they could to stop George from killing himself.
They sent the intern. He wasn't even like a full-on angel.
No, he wasn't. He didn't even have his wings yet. Want to know how long he's been doing this? 300 years he's been an angel. And he hasn't saved or helped one person.
God,
he hasn't gotten
George Bailey just gets the shaft with everything.
He just could not catch a break.
Even God turned his back on George Bailey.
Whatever.
Send the idiot.
He's already on his way to get us coffee. He might as well swing by and talk to this guy.
I don't like there's a hierarchy in heaven. There's a whole lore of this. I don't like how they established it.
Why is it in space?
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, it isn't.
I did like how they showed them as like galaxies. That's neat.
That's cool as shit.
Dumb.
I don't want to be called an idiot or like spoken to behind my back by God and his disciples. That's hurtful.
Yeah, there is a weird class system. He's literally second class.
Yeah.
I'm angel second class. And I think everyone becomes an angel.
Equal. In God's eyes, apparently not. Not for
Some
George.
weird boy
George is the lowest class in everyone's eyes.
Yep.
Sort of ripping off the Christmas Carol, Clarence shows George a reality in which he was never born, upon the wish of George. In this reality, everything is strange and different. Mary is an old maid, the town is called Pottersville, his brother is dead. The only thing that has remained the same is that Violet is still a slut. Except in this universe, she's getting paid for it.
So I'm sorry, I have to add one thing that I forgot to say. The hero of the Christmas movie drunk drives himself to jump off the bridge. Okay, I have a few things that I wrote down about this scene where he's in the alternate reality. First off, George only wants to drink. He wants to see Martini, the bartender, twice, maybe even 3 times before
Where's
he
Martini?
goes. For the first off, he's like, I need a drink. And then he goes, say, where's Martini, Nick? Wow, Nick, you're really mean. And then they leave. And then they go see his brother's
He goes
grave.
back to Martini after his wife.
Yes. He wants to see Martini 2 or 3 times before he wants to see his
He keeps
children.
going back to the bartender.
Okay. Mr. Gower stumbles into the bar. Drunk, vagrant, homeless guy. Without George, Mr. Gower never learned his lesson. Sure, because he poisoned the kids.
He gives all the poison to the kids.
And then he spends 20 years in jail. And he comes out, and instead of being like, you know what, maybe alcohol was a problem.
Learn the error of my
He drinks
ways.
so hard that he loses his house. He's a homeless drunk.
Mm-hmm.
They're covered in newspapers. I don't.
Is this the man that needs to be giving us our prescriptions?
And
Okay.
serving our children ice cream and candy.
Clarence only cares about himself. Several times, all he says is, I want to get my wings. Why do you think I'm here?
Yeah,
I want to get my wings.
that's no way to talk. I won't get my wings if you talk that way. Really, Clarence?
Dude, he knew
Focus on the
exactly
goal.
what to say to George. Because George is so selfless that if Clarence
Everybody's
was
just playing George throughout this whole movie.
like, if Clarence was like, hey George, this is for you, George would be like, whatever. I'll kill myself. But if it's about anybody else, George is like, fine. What else? Pottersville. The town of Pottersville. That's supposed to be a horror-scape, right? The main street is popping. People are out and about unlike ever before. Joe's bar.
Violet is horror.
Their version of a horror-scape is casinos and strip clubs and a pretty booming atmosphere. I don't know.
Go to the nightlife
it's a
part
give
of
and
any
take.
city, and that's what it looks like. Also, on top of that, Nick's bar, the asshole Nick, horrible businessman, who when Clarence doesn't order what's a normal drink, he threatens to kick the shit out of him. Great businessman. Nick's bar is around 5 times busier than Martini's. Martini's is almost empty. Nick is it's standing room only in there because Pottersville is better. I mean, like, dude, it's so much better that the guy whose family has been there for 5 generations with that tree, when George is like, oh, you're in Bedford Falls, he's like, I'm in Pottersville. Don't you dare call it Bedford Falls. Like, everyone loves it. The cops don't care. The taxi they all love it there. Everyone loves it there except Violet, who is a whore. That's her only character. She gets caught. It's not pretty. That is the worst part.
Yeah, George asked her out on like a date once, and she's like, "Fuck that, dude! I was just gonna sleep with you."
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, all that."
He's like, "Oh, you want to go hiking?" And she's like, "Fuck no."
We'll take all our shoes off and we'll walk around on Mount Bedford.
It was weird. It was weird.
He did a classic George heavy breath, weird Holden Caulfield shit.
I'll shove a moon in your mouth and beams will shoot out of you. Yeah.
I'll feed you the moon.
She was just like, "No, man, I just wanted to fuck
you." I'm not going through all that.
Take a hint. It's been 20 years.
Clarence, right? His whole thing is he's like, I'm going to show George an alternate reality where he was never born. His whole thing was to give information. And then after George sees what his life would be, what the world would be like without him, he's like, where's my wife? Where's my wife? And Clarence is like, I'm not allowed to tell. What do you mean? Isn't this whole thing a lecture? And then 2 seconds later, he tells him where his wife is. She's a librarian, and a hot one at that. The hottest librarian I've ever seen.
A smoke show throughout the whole movie.
It doesn't make any sense. That's the one flaw I see. She would have been taken by somebody.
Yeah, George Bailey. Just because George Bailey wasn't there, she ended up with
she
no
gave
one.
Still could have been up with the rich hee-haw.
Yeah, she would have been with him. She was dating him.
It doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense that if George Bailey died young or something, that she wouldn't be with anybody else because she was in love with George. But if George never existed, she would be with someone. Did you see that librarian? I'd be reading all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be at the library all the time.
Yeah.
This picture book is great.
Maybe if I had enough money for Violet, I wouldn't, but maybe.
True enough. I'd want her to read to me.
Then after that with the wife, he's like, "Where's Martini?
Where's my? I need a drink.
I need some solid advice. Where's my bartender?"
That's the last note I took on this movie. Mary is a hot ass librarian. I'd be reading all the time.
It's an important note.
George realizes the errors in his ways and demands Clarence to take him back to the real world. George rushes home where he apologizes to his family for screaming at them all earlier and apologizes to his wife for wanting to kill himself. And for the first time in the entire movie, people come together to help George Bailey. The townspeople come back with the money he lent them in order to bail him out of the bank trouble and to avoid the imminent collapse of the town under the slumlord Potter. George's war hero brother has come into town for the holidays, and they all sing and sing and sing. The bell tolls, and we learn that Clarence, a flightless angel, has gained his wings, and they all live happily ever after. The end.
Except that's not really a happy
Dude, this is the worst thing that could have happened to George Bailey.
Because now that that's paid.
All debt is forgiven now. George Bailey's back at zero with everybody. They all just bailed him out. So everything he just did was all just so he could cover his dumb ass uncle's ass.
Yep.
He still can't leave. His dream was to leave. He's still stuck in hell.
Not only that,
now he's more stuck.
Now he's more stuck because
he owes people now.
Or at the very least, they don't owe him.
Because now it's like,
even if he saved their life,
because now no matter what, people are gonna be like, "Ah, man, George, Remember when I helped you?
Mhm.
Remember when I gave you all that money?
That was kind to me, wasn't
And
it?
then the-
George?
And
And
he's
then
too
half
bashful.
the
He's not
people-
gonna remember to build you a house.
Half the people are gonna be like that. The other half are gonna be like, "Oh, George, still waiting on that $20 I gave you at Christmas."
It's really messed up. Also, the long-lasting impact of the way that their father behaved that night. I feel like the kids wouldn't be too happy to see him when he comes charging into the house. Where is everybody?
Yeah,
I feel
sweaty,
like they'd be scared.
wet,
Like,
covered in snow, maniac.
I'm
yeah.
going to jail, isn't it great? Daddy, stop! Oh, no! I don't want him to stay, but I don't want him to go.
Police did nothing to resolve this situation. They were more scared than
Yeah.
anyone in the household.
Zuzu's pedals. Her name's Zuzu.
Great name.
I do. That was my favorite part. Just Suzu.
It's a friggin' horror movie.
Stay away, Bert. I'm gonna hit you again. He's very violent.
He's like the cowardly lion in that scene.
Put him up.
Put him up. Put him up, Bert.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about with this movie? Mainly just the wonder of how it's become so big. Also, when it came out, not a hit movie at all.
No.
Complete disaster at the box office. It was actually flagged because it was in that time during the Red Scare. That was flagged as communist propaganda.
How?
People were not supposed to watch that movie.
Because it was kind of going against capitalism.
Yeah, because
Especially
Potter
with
was the
Pottersville.
capitalist. And
And,
like
like,
also
yeah.
like I could even see like if you add a stretch. Because the whole thing
Yeah,
is like
because people
you
start
should
citing
be-
it about how it's like a communist movie nowadays, and it's like that's kind of a stretch. If you actually watch the movie, I
But at
get
the
where you're
same
coming from, but
time-
no, not really.
if you are under extreme propaganda, George Bailey is supposed to be okay with living and working in his town forever for no money, for no goals.
Yes,
He's supposed to. It's a wonderful life living like this.
George, you really do have a wonderful life.
He made 45 cents like a year or some shit. That's
was
how much.
horrible.
Yeah, he didn't make anything. Craziness. Potter was willing to give him a salary, and today's money that would be equal to $350,000.
Mhm.
And he shook his hand. And he's like, "Oh wait, you're disabled." Ew! And he wiped his hand off. No, Potter, no. Yeah, don't come at me. That's what he did.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. We've just bastardized a beloved classic,
Buckle up.
and now we're gonna do it again.
It's a wonderful life to lose. We open on the ringing of bells, church bells, jingle bells, bells of all sorts everywhere. Angels are flying all over the place, and joy has filled the air of Bedford Falls as the town prepares for Christmas, which is only a few happy days away. And among the happiest of these people is a man by the name of George Bailey.
It has been 360 days since his attempted suicide, and George has not wanted to self-harm since. His love for life has been able to outshine all the problems the world could throw at him. He kisses his family goodbye on his walk to work, where he waves to everyone in town. There isn't a soul around who doesn't know and love George Bailey, or so it seems. However, lurking in the shadows, there are some that refuse to dive into the joyous holiday spirit, as well as those that have disdain in their heart for George Bailey.
One of those souls is Henry F. Potter, who crosses his arms and scoffs at George as he walks by. After all, the old man was nearly rid of his business adversary last Christmas, before he was quite literally bailed out by the disgusting union of humanity. He's the only one in all of Bedford Falls that has a sour opinion on George. The others reside in a land far away.
Flying into a hole in Potter's office, passing by drywall, dodging spiderwebs, and finally digging deep into the dark earth, we find ourselves in a series of small, eerie tunnels. Residing in the earth is a spider, who is soon accompanied by a beetle. The two begin to speak. One of them, the spider, is clearly the devil, and the beetle is an unnamed accomplice. They discussed their near victory last year over the soul of George Bailey, and the way in which God and his angels foiled their plans. They need a ringer. They need someone who is going to get the job done by any means necessary. They need Mo. Slithering in, seemingly on cue, a centipede emerges from one of the tunnels, and the devil tells him the task at hand. This Christmas, they strike back. They will have the soul of George Bailey. The creatures laugh as fire roars behind them, firing out of the various tunnels.
We zoom back out, exiting the eyes of George Bailey, which seem to be filled with fire for a moment, despite his smile. In the seat in front of him is a woman dressed in black. We'll call her Heather. Heather, frequently using a handkerchief, explains to George that she is unable to repay the loan, payments of which are piling up and she doesn't know what to do. Her husband died in the war 2 years ago, and with the children and the time period, she hasn't been able to find a decent job. George, with the heart of an angel, puts a giant, reassuring hand on her shoulder and tells her not to worry, and that she can pay him back when she gets a chance.
Heather leaves the office with a smile and George exits his office, happy, another life touched. However, nobody else seems to be on the same page. In fact, everyone else is pretty mad, which they express to George at the board meeting. The building alone is created by a series of investors, as displayed by the run that occurred during the Depression. The money that is lent to the people is money that belongs to everyone, not just George Bailey, and his charity is beginning to wear on those around him. He can't continue to give people free homes. It doesn't matter if he's helping people, now those around him feel like he's hurting them.
George, a dreamer like his father, doesn't see it that way, but there is one man in particular who truly believes that there is something foul going on. A fellow by the name of Tom, that dude that asked for $242 of George's honeymoon money. He leaves the meeting with subterfuge in his eyes, and it's obvious that he will be up to no good.
George comes home late into the night, and despite his attempt to remain positive, today has gotten him down. Instead of going to bed and ranting to his wife about the problems with the business, and the way in which the board is breathing down his neck to seize money and property from already struggling widows and the less fortunate, he decides to sit in his chair. Twirling a globe around and looking at the places he never visited, the grandfather clock tolls 3 times, letting him know that it's already 3 in the morning and that he only has a few hours until he has to go back to work. George lets out a sigh, setting down the globe, letting go of the notion that he'll ever get out of this town, and he starts to make his way upstairs. However, a knock at the door stops him dead in his tracks.
Who could possibly be knocking at 3 in the morning? George slowly walks to the front door. Pushing open the creaky old door, he is surprised to see nothing. Sycamore Street is empty, other than light snowfall, and the morning air is silent. A crash behind George causes him to jump. Turning around, he sees the banister knob has fallen to the floor on its own. Heading to bed, George lays awake until the morning sun returns.
The next day, George and his family go on a drive to the park. It's a good family getaway and an afternoon that George is in desperate need of. The park is still in Bedford Falls, just outside of town and across the bridge that George nearly threw himself off of last year. But on the ride home, something seems off. A man stands on the bridge looking out over the water. He's underdressed as the snow falls, and he seems overall out of place. George nearly drives by, but Mary tells him to pull over to ask if the man is okay. The man identifies himself as Mo, played by Marlon Brando, and says that he could use a ride.
George drops his family off, promising to take Mo wherever he needs. As the two drive, they talk. Mo is charming and seems to know exactly what to say to George. George likes him. And as they get to the end of town where it says, now leaving Bedford Falls, George asks where to which Mo says he has no destination, no home, no family, no hope. No home, no family, no hope. George, being so selfless, can't let him walk away into the snow by himself, and offers him to stay with his family for Christmas. Nobody should be alone for the holidays. George knows that better than anyone.
So, coming home, George welcomes Mo into their homes and into their lives. Little does he know that this is no ordinary guest, and even though he has a nice smile and a charming wit, he is not to be trusted.
Meanwhile, as one mole enters the midst of the Baileys, another one begins a path of treachery of their own. Making their way to the lair of Mr. Potter, Tom, the fuckface, brings his concerns of George Bailey to the old man, telling him that the business and loan is going under and that George Bailey is running a non-profit charity. Potter sees an opportunity, a way to cause chaos, and he realizes now the way to get back at George Bailey isn't a game of financial checkers, but a game of thrones. Being bound to a chair, Potter knows all about such things, and with an evil grin, hatches a plan to take down the building and loan once and for all. It will not be a battle against George Bailey, but against his brother Harry.
After the war and the honor and the accolades and the life that all people, especially his brother, would dream of, Harry Bailey has decided to return to Bedford Falls. Being the coolest and most popular guy in this town is cool, but owning the family business would be lovely. But Harry, once again, has higher aspirations. He doesn't want the responsibility of one building, but all the buildings in the whole town. Harry Bailey is actively running for town mayor, and due to his likability and glory, he is running unopposed. Just about everyone is cool with him being in charge, except for mean old Mr. Potter. And now, armed with wrongdoings of the Bailey family business, he can put a stop to it. The following December morning, Henry F. Potter makes a public announcement that he will be running against Harry and plans to become the newest mayor of Bedford Falls.
The town is aghast, with nobody more shocked than George Bailey. He paces back and forth in his house, staring at the Vote Potter sign across the street. George rants to Mo, explaining just how rotten Potter is and shedding a light on what Potter plans to do with this town.
You see firsthand what Potter is capable of doing to Bedford Falls if given a little more power, and it isn't a happy sight. With only a few days until election time, the city of Bedford Falls must act fast in order to decide their candidate, calling for a debate that very night.
Backstage at the debate, George paces about, nervous about the incoming war of words. However, his brother is calm and collected. This is nothing for him, and he has all the confidence in the world that he will defeat Potter. Nobody truly likes Potter, so why would they vote for him? However, as the debate begins, it becomes clear that the old man already has a host of supporters. Led by Tom, several people in the crowd wear Make Bedford Falls Great Again hats and tote Potter banners.
Bert, the cop, is the moderator of the debate, and he leads the two competitors through a very easygoing debate. Potter reveals that his plan for the city is, of course, to bring in more revenue for Bedford Falls via business development, tourism, etc. Harry Bailey, the social conservative, believes that the town should stay exactly the same. There are people that like that sentiment, but as the debate is just about to come to a close, Potter reveals his ace in the hole. Ripping Harry apart, he attacks the Bailey family business, the scandals that have surrounded them for years now, including their misplacement of thousands of dollars last year, as well as the current fraudulent behavior. He goes so hard at Harry that Bert has to call for order in the auditorium as the onlookers cheer and scream.
George Bailey sits in his chair. A cigarette hangs from his mouth as he shakes his head in rage. He holds a paper that reveals the most recent polls. Henry Potter and Harry Bailey are exactly the same. 50-50, split down the middle. George curses the old man and the whole town for being so foolish. Mo, using some of his wit, is able to coerce George into spitting more vitriol, diving into various memories in which Potter and his lackeys have wronged him. George, in the heat of the moment, wishes that none of them were ever born. It's a pretty cookie-cutter declaration for George, but one that keeps having results.
Putting a cold hand on George's shoulder, Mo finally tells George the nature of his visit. He is not some aimless drifter trying to get across ambiguous upstate New York before Christmas. He's not even from New York, or even the earthly plane. He tells George that he is his guardian angel. George rejects such nonsense. He already has a guardian angel. His name is Clarence. He met him last year. Mo explains to George that Clarence has moved on. After receiving his wings, Clarence has no place for someone as insignificant as George. Now the only person looking out for George is Mo, and using the same magic that Clarence utilized to show George the beauty of life, Mo uses his powers of darkness to manipulate his subject.
Diving into an alternate reality, a world in which Henry Potter was never born, George Bailey wakes up in a palace. Resting on the top of Mount Bedford, a gigantic globe sits in the middle of the room, with various X's marking the places he has gone. And the good things are still there. He's still married to Mary Hatch, but not just Mary Hatch. George has his harem and his multiple wives. It's awesome.
As he walks around wearing his silk robe and drinking the finest champagne, George learns that he is responsible for the construction of the country's tallest building, sitting in the heart of Manhattan. The Bailey Building doubles the size of the Empire State Building. He has a luxury condo there too, and, just as things couldn't get any better, George receives a phone call from his father, who is very alive. If it had not been for the meddling of Henry F. Potter, Peter Bailey's heart wouldn't have given out, and George would have had the opportunity to live the life he always wanted.
Coming out of the vision in a world of ecstasy and bliss, George grits his teeth at the heinous reality he must return to. But after a brief discussion with Mo, he decides that he shouldn't dwell on what-ifs. He has a good life now, with a wife and a family, and it doesn't matter what his life could have been. This is his life now, and that's not bad. But seeing his manipulation skills being put to the test, Mo pulls out the big guns, offering another quandary.
Does your wife truly have the best interest for you at heart? After all, she never wanted you to leave. She wanted you to stay right here in Bedford Falls, to buy this house you wouldn't have lived in if you were a ghost. And he hates to tell George this, but at the rate he's going, that will be the fate of his restless spirit. George, overcome with the slander of his wife and the way in which this man has toyed with his head, throws a mighty punch into the jaw of Mo, sending him crashing through the dining room table.
That same fiery look in his eyes appears as he lunges toward Mo, looking to punish him more and more for his trespasses against George. But the only thing that stops him is the presence of his wife and children standing on the staircase, watching the carnage unfold. Standing in shocked silence, they all look to each other before Zuzu begins to cry. George, once again a scary parent, reaches out to calm his daughter, but not before she runs away crying. Mo, wiping the blood from his lip, stands bearing a smile. George tells him to get out of his house, and Mo surprisingly obeys. But so too does George's family.
It is Christmas Eve and George sits at home alone. Mary has taken the children to Grandma Hatch's house and tells George that they can't live like this anymore. George sits in his chair in silence. His life could not get any worse. Or so he thinks. Uncle Billy rushes into George's house, tears running down his face. He's blubbering like a baby and all he can say is, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." On his lapel, he wears a badge that reads, "I voted," which George notices as he grabs him by the shoulders. George shakes him and tells him to pull himself together, asking what the hell is the matter with him. "I voted for the wrong man," he says through tears and snot. The radio clicks on by itself, and the voice of Bert, the cop/moderator, can be heard reading the results of the local election. Henry F. Potter has won by a single vote, and has revealed his first order of business is to shut down the fraudulent building and loan, forcing the Baileys to pay every cent of what they owe to this community. It's a debt that cannot be paid.
George's eyes bug out of his head as Uncle Billy sobs. George can feel his hands moving, but it is as if he has no control over his fingers wrapping around Uncle Billy's neck. He can hear the laughter of Potter, Sam Wainwright's hee-haw, and the endless begging from every voice in Bedford Falls until finally he hears nothing, not even the crying of Uncle Billy, who has turned into a purple heap in George's hands.
Although initially in shock, George's thirst for blood grows stronger. On the night of Christmas Eve, George Bailey walks out into the snow, a bottle of whiskey in hand, and a look of fire in his eyes.
Meanwhile, in the deep regions of space, Clarence receives a handful of distress prayers from Mary and her children, pleading for the heavenly host to watch over and protect George. Clarence burns bright in star form as he shoots through space, stopping at nothing to get to Bedford Falls and to help his friend one more time. But as it turns out, he might be too late.
George Bailey drives his car as fast as he can go down the streets of Bedford Falls. Crashing it headfirst into the supply store. Smashing through the front door, George staggers out of his car until he comes across what it is he is looking for. As if perfectly displayed in the center of the room, George's hands grip around its coarse wooden handle. Lifting it overhead, the blade shines in the headlight of his car as George's shadow charges into the night.
Trudging through the December snow, that crazy look in his eyes, George stomps along, mumbling incoherently to himself. The closest house to the supply store is a few blocks away, and after the crash, the residents have come to life. Tying a robe and stepping out into the street, the homeowner looks to the looming presence of George Bailey, who walks absent-mindedly toward him. The man notices that George doesn't look as though he's in his right mind. There's something frightening about him, and he holds something behind his back in the darkness.
"Say, George, are you all right?" the man asks, looking at the wreck behind him and the blood on George's forehead from the steering wheel. As the man walks under the light of the lamppost, George gets a good look at his face, and it launches him into a memory. Back in the building and loan, a mob is formed, each person demanding money. It's the run. The man, whose name is Tom, steps up to the counter and demands $242. "I'll take $242, and $242 won't break anybody."
Filled with rage, George huffs and puffs. Tom continues to ask if he's alright. Finally, after a moment, just as Tom is turning to cry for help, George raises the axe in his hand, lifting it above his bloody head and bringing it down upon the greedy man before him. Horrifying music plays as razors rip across the strings and the snow is tainted a terrifying gray. It's a black and white movie.
George drops the axe and holds his ears as the sounds of voices rush into his mind. He hears his children crying, his father asking him to work at the building and loan, a few hee-haws from Sam Wainwright, and finally, the sound of Moe's laughter.
Landing on the street of Bedford Falls, an unseen Clarence looks to the carnage and destruction that has befallen the little town. The supply store is on fire. There are several people dead and wounded laying in the streets. It's a rampage. A scream can be heard from inside City Hall, and Clarence spreads his wings and flies to the scene.
Inside the office of the mayor, which has since been decorated with portraits of Potter, George Bailey stands with a bloodied axe and the entire building has been set on fire. George looks demented, his face is warped with a devilish smile, and around his neck hangs a horrifying necklace, fashioned out of the fingers and twine of his dead Uncle Billy. Potter sits in his chair, one leg already hacked off. George raises the axe when he is stopped by a book. Striking him in the back of the head and then landing face up on the floor, George stares at Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer before looking up at the glowing, winged body of Clarence.
Clarence nearly beckons the axe out of George's hand, but he is thwarted by the presence of a new guest. Leaning against the threshold of Uncle Billy's office, Moe gazes in casually, telling George not to listen to Clarence. He doesn't have George's best interest at heart. Everything he ever did for George was to better his own status in the afterlife. All he wanted was his wings. Brushing it off as ridiculous, Clarence attempts to pull the axe out of George's hand, but he won't give it up. George has fallen to the dark side. Lifting the axe, he lops off Potter's head, which rolls on the floor next to Tom Sawyer.
Clarence, stepping back, realizes that the time for negotiation has passed, as too has the time for nonviolent discourse. Action must be taken. Ripping off his angelic robes, Clarence reveals his rippling muscles and the way in which his body glows, a beautiful golden aura. Moe laughs and cracks his neck, preparing for a fight.
Hellish claws rip through the skin of his hand, and Mo uses them to tear the flesh from his face, revealing the demonic face of Moloch, King of Shame. Clarence spreads his wings and fires like a torpedo into the chest of Moloch, smashing him through the wall and out of the building alone into the streets of Bedford Falls. They rip into one another, beating the crap out of each other as George Bailey hears the chorus of whispers and screams once more.
Covering his ears and dropping the axe, George is overcome with extrasensory stimulation. But this time, all he can hear is the voice of his wife. Buffalo girls, won't you come out tonight? George Bailey, I love you till the day we die. This was my wish. We dolly zoom into his face as the realization sets in. All the problems in George's life are his wife's fault. Leaping out of a hole in the building, wielding his axe, George Bailey begins to sprint towards Sycamore Street.
Moloch and Clarence have taken their battle to an alternate realm, courtesy of Clarence, who is doing his best to protect the people of Earth. Using his wings, Clarence grabs Moloch, skyrocketing into the atmosphere. The demon claws his face until the two make it into the void of space. While here, the two engage in a zero-gravity brawl. Moloch bites into the angelic flesh, delivering a few nasty blows. Using the rope from his robe, Clarence lassos the moon, swinging it around his head and slamming it into the demon. The crunch of bone and shattering moon rocks echo through space as the moon explodes around the demon. Finally, with all of his might, Clarence grabs Moloch by the shoulders and charges towards the earth. Tucking his wings like a falcon, Clarence goes faster and faster until boom! They strike the earth, going down, down, down into the fiery flames of hell. With one final blow, Clarence banishes Moloch into the pit of fire, causing an explosion to erupt below. Dodging the blast and escaping the cavernous hole in the ground, Clarence flies out of the earth as the flames follow behind him like the Millennium Falcon.
But it's too late. The Bailey family home has been burned to the ground, as has the Hatch house, presumably with everyone inside, and George stands on the bridge looking out over the rushing river.
Clarence looks to the man he thought he saved, seeing that same pain and sadness in his eyes that has always been there. And he realizes now that George Bailey is unfixable. No amount of positive affirmations or psychic visions can change that fact. He killed like 100 people.
And as George takes that step across the bridge, leaving the town of Bedford Falls for the first time, Clarence sighs, sheds a tear, and fades away. He has failed.
George Bailey finally makes it out of Bedford Falls. But as the snow flies, the clock strikes midnight on Christmas morning. The lights of the police cars illuminate the countryside as they drive across the bridge in pursuit of George Bailey, whose wonderful life has come to a tragic end.
This would be a great horror story. My God. Well done, Wyatt. Thank you.
The Muppets should do this. This should be their retelling of
Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
All right.
But George Bailey would be played by Kermit. Mo would be played by Pepe. Clarence, Rizzo the Rat.
Yes. Sam the Eagle is Mr. Potter.
Yeah. This should be, because they already did It's a Wonderful Life.
Fozzie Bear is Uncle Billy.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be perfect.
Oh, Kermit. I made a mistake. Waka
We'll
waka.
kill you,
Waka
Fozzie.
waka.
I swear to God.
That's it, you dumb bear!
Fozzie, I'm gonna kill you.
Fuck you!
You walk on your last walk up.
It's all your wife's fault, Kermit. That's Mo.
Or should Gonzo be Clarence?
That's good too, actually.
Yeah.
Stop this, Kermit!
Interior Potter's office night. The door of the office swings open, the lights from the hallway shining a small beam of illumination through the center of the room. The rest of the office remains shrouded in darkness. Mr. Potter, unaccompanied, wheels himself inside. In the far corner of the room, someone sits, unseen. The room is so stained with cigarette smoke that Potter cannot detect the burning dart hanging from the unseen visitor's mouth. As they inhale, the end of the cigarette glows an aura of orange on the face, revealing that, sitting in the darkness, is George Bailey. Mr. Potter unlocks the safe from behind the desk, and his mouth falls to the floor. He reaches around in the safe, flabbergasted.
What in the name of... It's gone, Potter.
Potter jumps, holding his chest as George Bailey stands up, walking towards him.
Stand back. I'll call the police. Why don't you go ahead and call them?
The rotary phone on Potter's desk has been damaged, the line cut, leaving it dead and useless.
Besides, I have something I want to report myself.
As George says this, he steps into the light. Potter's eyes grow large.
Bailey, what are you doing here? What's the meaning of this? Where's my money?
George smiles as he shakes his head as he takes another drag from his cigarette.
You still don't get it, do you, Potter? Now maybe I never built a skyscraper, and maybe I didn't win the Medal of Honor, but darn it, I've helped the people of this town my whole life. I've done everything. I've given everything. I've solved every godforsaken problem. But there's still one problem, Mr. Potter, and until I solve it, Bedford Falls is gonna suffer. And that problem is you.
Me?
Yeah, you and your stinking money. Money you've stolen from the rest of us. $8,000 that you stole from my family. Nearly got me thrown in jail. I wish more than anything that you weren't around anymore to hurt the rest of us, but sometimes you're the only one that can make a wish come true. Not broken glass or some crummy, wingless angel. Just you. And confound it, my wish is coming true right now.
No, you don't want to do this, boy. I'll give you everything. My entire fortune. Please, George, please.
George laughs, taking one final draw from his cigarette.
I don't want your money. I'm the richest man in town.
George flicks his cigarette on the ground, which causes an eruption of flames to explode everywhere. As the light of the fire illuminates the room, we see stacks upon stacks of cash lining the room, the Potter fortune.
No!
George raises the axe that he has hidden in the darkness, allowing the light of the fire to reflect in the metallic blade. He brings the axe down on Potter, causing it to land right on his leg.
Oh, goodness. It looks like I missed you there, Potter. Let me just,
George pulls the axe out, causing Potter to writhe and grip the handles of his chair.
Stop it, George. Stop it, please.
See, I assumed you wouldn't feel that given your legs and all.
I'm not paralyzed. I'm old, you idiot.
Oh, that landed you another chop.
George... Sorry. George swings the axe once more, and it lands right in the same spot.
Ah!
Sorry.
Hot dog!
Oh. George lets go of the axe, allowing it to hang in the old man's leg.
Well, that's $1 million shot, eh, Potter?
George smiles, shaking his head, putting his hands on his hips and admiring his work.
All right, I'm gonna kill you now.
George raises the axe, but is stopped by a hole being ripped in the wall. Enough! The fire is extinguished by the arrival of Clarence, who stands in the new hole, shirtless, to reveal a heavenly host of muscles on his torso. Attached to his back are two glorious wings.
Clarence!
George! George! What have you done? I thought I showed you that you had a wonderful life.
You see, that's just the thing, Clarence. You're right. I see it now. I do have a wonderful life. It's not my fault things haven't panned out. It's all of these people. And there won't just be one murder. There's going to be a whole hatful. First Uncle Billy, then Mr. Potter, and then I'll get Sam Wainwright, that yawn son of a gun. Then I'm going to go home. I'm going to kill my wife.
George! This isn't you! None of this is you!
Well, sure it is. Haven't you been paying attention? I'm violent and aggressive, and I fly off the handle all the time. I've been winding up for years, Clarence. Now do me a favor and stand back.
Stand back?
I wish I had $1 million.
George swings the axe into Potter again. George, no!
Hot dog!